So hello story lovers, what's up and welcome to Africa Folktale and History with Neze. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications. Long ago, Africa was a land of beauty and tradition where people lived in harmony with nature. Families were tightly bound and villages were filled with laughter, song, and the passing down of stories. The land's wealth wasn't in gold or jewels, but in its people, a community, a bond between families that had lasted for centuries. But across the ocean, in faraway lands, powerful nations were hungry. They wanted to build empires, to grow vast crops, and dig deep into the earth for riches. They needed labor, hands to plant, to harvest, and to build. So they looked to Africa. By the mid-1500s, European traders arrived on African shores, bringing with them goods, gunpowder, alcohol, fine fabrics, and metal tools. In exchange, they sought something far more precious: people. At first, African tribes and kingdoms resisted the foreign traders, unwilling to sabotage their own. But as the years passed, the power of the trade began to grow. Slowly, the promise of riches tempted some. People who had once been family became commodities. Rival clans will sell captives, thieves, rapists, and those guilty of committing Aru abominations were sold as punishment for their crimes. Humans soon became spoils of war, and in terrible cases, some even betrayed their own kin. The slave trade grew monstrous, with networks spreading across Africa's shores, tearing families apart, destroying identities, pulling people from their homes, and forcing them into ships that would take them to a life of chains. The ships were terrible. People were forced below deck in a worse than animal standard, chained together in tight rows without space to sit up or even lie straight, barely able to breathe for months. The journey was a nightmare that seemed never ending. So many people lost their lives, and those who did became like empty shells, tossed without thought into the churning waters by hands that saw them as nothing more worthless than scraps. And so, generation after generation, Africa lost thousands of its sons and daughters who were taken forcefully from their lands to serve in foreign fields, in mines, and in the homes of those who had never known the songs of Africa. By the year 1803, the slave trade was at its peak, and it was in this world of betrayal and sorrow that a man named Ifechi would rise. A man whose courage would leave a mark not just on Africa, but across the seas. In a quiet Igbo village, sheltered under the vast leafy spread of Nigeria's natural beauty, a child named Ifechi was born in 1773. From the very beginning, Ifechi was different. While other children laughed and played, he would sit and listen, his eyes filled with a depth that startled even the village elders. They would whisper, "Aga nnukwu ihe gbagwoju anya n'ọnụ nwata," which means this child speaks mysteries beyond his age. As he got older, his wisdom grew even more apparent. His parents taught him the traditions of their people, the tales of their ancestors, and the respect they held for family, for community, and for kin. Ifechi quickly learned the ways of the land and the spirits. By the time he was a young man, he was appointed the chief priest of Ife, the spiritual guide of his people. Ifechi's voice could sway hearts and bring peace, and when he spoke, people listened. His words healed, inspired, and united the village. Ifechi became not just a chief priest, but a beloved leader. His wisdom and compassion drew people from far and wide, and his name became known beyond his own village. By the time he reached his 30s, Ifechi's people began to see him as their true leader, a potential king, or Eze, as they would say in Igbo. The respect he commanded was so strong that people would have gladly given their lives for him. But as his fame spread, envy naturally followed. Some men in the village felt threatened by Ifechi's growing influence, fearing that they would lose their own power if he became king. And in the shadows of jealousy, they conspired against him. These men saw an opportunity with the slave traders who prowled the coasts, eager for captives. On a night when the moon was hidden, they put their plan to action. Betraying their own chief priest, these men captured Ifechi, bound him in chains, and handed him over to the traders. The traders, oblivious to the honor of the man that they had taken, loaded him onto their ship, where he was packed tightly alongside hundreds of others, bound for the hunting unknown. The slave ship, called the Wanderer, was notorious for the misery it carried. Packed into the dark hold of the ship, Ifechi found himself in a place where he could barely breathe. The air was thick with sorrow, the cries of despair filling every corner of the ship. Mothers looked on helpless as sickness took their children from them, slipping away like water through cupped hands. Yet the chains held them from even a last embrace. Husbands watched with silent agony, totally powerless to shield their wives as they got dragged away every night, their dignity trampled by those who held them captive. And as unspeakable horrors unfolded before him, Ifechi's spirit remained steadfast. Ifechi laid among his own captives, his body in chains, yet his spirit as free as it had ever been. Even in this terrible darkness, Ifechi was a leader. He began to speak to those around him, his voice a quiet comfort in the sea of misery. We are the children of our ancestors, he would remind them. They live in us, and no chains can take that away. Day by day, he reminded them of their worth, of the land that awaited their spirits, of the dignity that they carried within. His words touched their hearts, bringing courage to those who had nearly lost hope. Though they were miles away from their homes, the captives found strength in his words, a reminder of who they were. As the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, the ship neared the coast of America, but Ifechi knew in his heart that he would not live a life of chains. On May 28, 1803, the ship approached St. Simon's Island in Georgia, where they would be sold. Ifechi's words had given strength to those around him, and he spoke to them again, his voice carrying a new urgency. We are not slaves, he told them. We were born free. Our ancestors gave us the courage to choose our fates. His words were powerful, echoing through the minds of the other captives. Would you rather live in chains and servitude or die as free men and women? He asked. The captives, inspired by Ifechi's courage, made a decision. They will not allow themselves to be sold into bondage. So as the ship docked and as guards moved towards them, they took their stand. Together, they moved to the edge of the ship, one by one, holding hands in a final defiant act. And in that moment, they leapt, choosing the freedom of the ocean over the chains of slavery. The place where they jumped into the water became known as the Igbo Landing, a site of remembrance and resistance. And to this very day, the story of Ifechi and his people's bravery remains. Locals believe that the spirits of those who perished in that act of defiance linger near the waters of Dumba Creek. During fierce storms and hurricanes, people say that you could hear voices carried on the wind, the voices of those who chose freedom that day. The voices of those 75 people who would rather embrace freedom in death than life in captivity. The hurricanes are said to carry the spirits of Igbo Landing, as if Ifechi and his people still call for justice, their spirits unbroken even in death. The people of St. Simon's Island speak of Igbo Landing with respect and awe, a place where the unbreakable spirit of a people can still be felt. Today, Igbo Landing stands as a powerful symbol of resistance and freedom. May 28, 1803 is remembered not just as a day of tragedy, but as a day of triumph. A reminder of the strength and dignity of a people who chose death over bondage. Ifechi's spirit, along with those who followed him, is believed to live on in the wind and waves, calling us to remember that true freedom can never be taken and a strong soul can never be broken. And so, the story of Ifechi and the Igbo Landing lives on, passed down from generation to generation, a tale that speaks to the unbreakable spirit of humanity. Dear story lovers, the story of the Igbo Landing has taught me that though the body can be charred and marred, the spirit and the soul can never be broken. It reminds me of the strength and the resilience of our ancestors who chose to die free rather than live a life of chains. It reminds me of who we truly are. What does the Igbo Landing story teach you? Drop all of those down in the comment section. So guys, yes, we have come to the end of today's story. If you're hearing my voice for the first time, if you're coming across this channel for the first time, or if you have watched us and you're yet to subscribe, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, drop all your comments down in the comment section, and turn on your bell notifications so you can be alerted when a new story drops. It's Africa Folktale and History with Neze, and I'll see you guys in our next video. Bye.